Everyone, today we are looking at market structures, and specifically for the Year 12 course, we are looking at oligopolies and the way that they behave with each other. Okay, one way in which they behave is that they collude with each other. They get together, they agree to fix prices, restrict competition between each other, and they do this to increase their profits, right? And of course, this is going to happen at the expense of the consumers, the ones who have to pay the higher prices or receive the worst service or competition. How they do this, they can just, like I said, set prices. They can restrict competition. So one way they might do that, non-price competition, they might look at what they've been doing. Let's say it's two companies, right? Two companies. And they look at how much they've been spending on advertising and trying to drum up their business. They're competing. They're saying, we're better for this reason, etc. And they might look at how much they're spending there and think, man, we'd be better off if we just both didn't compete so much with each other. Not try to win this advertising arms race. And we could just keep all that money as profits. And so that's something that they could do. It is illegal, but they could do it. Another thing they could do is divide the market they have by geographical or other factors. So they might say, look, if a new client pops up in the western side of town, you get them. We will overquote for the job. So we'll say we'll do it for a much higher price. You guys will win. We might say, look, we're not going to open up stores right next to each other. We'll give each other, say, 5 kilometers or whatnot. So restricting competition, it may help their profits, but it's going to hurt the consumer. Now, this is hard to do. It's illegal for one, so they've got to be really secretive about it, but it's also difficult to happen. So to keep going, there is an incentive for each firm in the collusive oligopoly, the group of companies that are colluding. There's an incentive of them to cheat. So what they might do is, if they secretly do try to compete, so they might compete without the other firm knowing how much they're competing, and they might be able to increase their profits without sort of breaking the trust of the other firm. So there's an incentive there, because these firms and these managers, they're profit driven. There are also cost differences between firms. So firms, if they come together to fix a price, they might just not agree on what the optimal price is. One firm might be able to make it a bit cheaper, and they would want a lower price, which is maximizing their profit, and another firm want a higher price, which would maximize their profit. So they might struggle to initially agree on the price to set, and that's largely due to their cost differences. There is some slightly more complicated economic diagrams to show that's beyond the scope of this course, but it is the cost differences which would lead them to not agree on the optimal price. The number of firms in the oligopoly, if there's 2, it's a lot easier, but as we know, there can be a lot more than 2. There can be a wider number. There can be 5, 8 firms, and it's still technically an oligopoly. The more people you try to satisfy, or the more parties you try to satisfy, the more difficult it is to agree. The way it was explained to me once was, think of 8 people or 5 people even trying to order a pizza. They've all got different things. If they try to get something that everyone likes, then they might all be dissatisfied. So the number of firms in an oligopoly definitely affects how easy it is to collude. The smaller number, the more likely they are to be able to collude. Recessions. We know what recessions are. They can happen. There is a stronger incentive to cheat on an agreement when sales are paused. Like if all the companies in the collusive oligopoly are doing poorly, much greater incentive to cheat and undercut your opposition by offering a lower price to make some profits for your firm and forget about the agreement. Okay, here's an example. Anti-competitive boxing. So the box industry is actually a huge industry in Australia. And it's, if you think about it, everything that you buy, every good, is at some stage in a box. It might be at the back of the supermarket where you don't really see it. It might be on the shelf where you do see it. It might be delivered to your door in a box. Boxes for almost everything at some point. So there's huge money in the industry. We have in Australia 2 very large box manufacturers. They have economies of scale. That's one of the reasons they can be an oligopoly. There are huge barriers to entry into the industry. And I want to show you what happened to them. So they got together, they fixed prices, they ripped off the customers who were largely other businesses. They ripped them off, they made bigger profits, right? So what happened? They got caught. 2007, Visy got fined $36 million for price fixing. And then in 2011, their customers took them to court and they had to pay $97 million in damages in the class action lawsuit. So this gives you an idea, these figures give you an idea of how big this industry is. So we don't know exactly how much more profits they made from price fixing because it's hard to prove, but we know that they did do price fixing and they did get punished for it, and we don't want other firms to do it. That's why the punishments are quite severe. Okay, another thing that the governments can do to restrict the collusion is they can prevent mergers that will restrict competition. So what we've got an agency, a government agency, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, and they make sure that for a productive economy, we have competition and consumers' interests are looked after. So they have specific powers that allow them to prevent mergers, because mergers will just lead to fewer firms and there can be less competition if that happens. So for example, Coles and Woolworths, they would not be allowed to merge because there would just be not enough competition in the supermarket industry. Now, an example of where these powers were enforced, 2019, TPG and Vodafone, 2 telecommunications companies, they wanted to merge. The ACCC said, no, you're not going to do that. We will not have enough competition in the telecommunications industry if that happens, so they blocked it. These 2 companies, they really wanted to merge, so they appealed the decision and the federal court allowed the merger. Now, what has been found since is that the ACCC were probably justified, because in the years since, mobile plan prices have begun to soar. So that's what they were worried about, that with the lack of competition, prices would go up, and that is what happened when the merger was allowed to go ahead. Okay, we're moving on to another area now. This is game theory. So we're going to be looking at a duopoly. That's where an oligopoly, where there's only 2 firms, and how they interact with each other. So there's 3 definitions we really need to get down right now. So make sure you get these down. That goes for any definition that's in any video, of course. But we are going to see how we use this. So we look at firms and their interdependent behavior. What one firm does when there's only 2 firms in an industry, what one firm does is largely dependent on what the other firm will do. So we're going to see how that plays out. We've said that, we assume a duopoly. Okay. What we have here is a game theory payoff matrix. So we've got our 2 companies, which we assume are in a duopoly, Macca's and Hungry Jack's, and they've got a choice to make. Do they sell their standard meal for $15, so their Big Mac meal for McDonald's, $15 or $12? Hungry Jacks, so they sell their Whopper meal for $15 or $12. And their decision, of course, depends on what the other firm does. So we've got a process for this, right? I call this column, row. So we've got a process for analyzing this and working out if there's a Nash equilibrium, if there's Pareto efficient, if there's a dominant strategy. So we look at what Hungry Jack's behavior is if McDonald's decide to do a $15 meal. So Hungry Jack's going, all right, if they decide to do a $15 meal, what do? We can also sell a $15 meal and make $10 million profit, or we could undercut them. Think of how much better we'd do if we sold a $12 meal. We'd make $20 million profit. All right. So in this first column, $20 million profit is the choice that Hungry Jacks would make. Now, they would also look at what they would do if McDonald's sold a $12 meal. They could keep theirs at $15 and only make a $5 million profit, or they could follow them down to $12 meal, and that, in which case they would make an $8 million profit. All right, so column. Now we look at what McDonald's would do in response to Hungry Jacks. So this is where we look at the rows. So Hungry Jacks do a $15 meal. What do McDonald's do? Do they also sell $15 meal, $10 million profit? Or do they do $12 meal, make a $20 million profit? All right, they're going to do that, $20 million profit. We'll look at the second row. So column, row. Hungry Jacks do a $12 meal. Do Hungry Jacks make a $12 meal? Do McDonald's choose to make $5 million profit by selling for 15, or $8 million for selling for 12? They want $8 million profit as well. Now this here is our Nash equilibrium. So this is an equilibrium where neither McDonald's or Hungry Jacks can gain from switching to $15 meals if the other keeps selling $12 meals. So refer back to the Nash equilibrium that you've written down, and you'll see how this matches that situation. We're going to do heaps more of these in class. Okay, again, we can see that each firm has a dominant strategy. So no matter what Hungry Jacks does, a $12 meal is McDonald's best option here. So if Hungry Jacks sell for 15, they make more profit from a $12 meal. If Hungry Jacks sell for 12, Macca's still make more profit from a $12 meal. 8 compared to 5, 20 compared to 10. Dominant strategy. Hungry Jacks also have the dominant strategy for the same reasons. Now we will see payoff matrices like these where there is no dominant strategy. That's fine, but I wanted to show you this concept. Okay, we worked out was our equilibrium. Now lastly, this is not Pareto efficient because there is an outcome which increases one player's or one firm's payoff without reducing that of another. And of course, they would both be better off if they made the $10 million profit by selling a $15 meal. So if they colluded, that'd be fine. But if they are acting in good faith and competing, what will happen is their behavior will lead them to this $12 meal situation. Okay, again, this might be a lot to take in all at once. As long as you've got all your notes, we'll be cutting down class time and we'll be being able to do a lot of practice here. Okay, excellent.